Hello there. Welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with Mr. McDonald's. Today we are having a look at Edexcel History, Paper 2, the American West. And today's question is a explain the importance question. A member of a group of questions that I quite like to call the Golden Trio. Explain the importance is just basically it's an explain why question. It's just saying why is something important. So let's have a look at today's question. Let's break it down into our components that make up the question. So beginning with our command phrase. In this context, it is explain the importance. Alright, and again, just to reiterate, it's just an explain why. So actually, the real question is explain why the US, I'm just going to put US Gov for federal government. I've started now, so I'll finish the word government. Was important for dealing with law and order. Was important for dealing with law and order. That's all the question is. It's just a cheeky explain why, dead easy, just like medicine and USA and the Normans. Okay, let's have a look at the second component, and that's easy. In our instance, the focus of what we want to focus on today, and what knowledge we want to apply, is we want to have a look at the US federal government and dealing with law and order. So that is our focus. So what knowledge we need to apply is we need to consider what knowledge we have about the US federal government and law and order. So I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll offer you maybe 30 seconds now, annotate the word focus with what you remember about dealing with law and order. And of course, if you need to go away and have a little look at a revision guide or have a look at another YouTube video, then definitely go away and do that. So I'll leave you to pause it for now, and I'll see you shortly once you've worked out what you remember about the US federal government and dealing with law and order. See you shortly. Okay, welcome back. So let's have a little look then. So I'm just going to start by referring to the three groups or three roles that they created. So firstly, you have marshals. So you have US marshals, and they're created by the president. Again, likewise, again created by the president, you have town marshals. And their simple job is obviously to deal with law and order. When a town reaches a population of 50,000 people, they can appoint a sheriff. So these are the three groups: US Marshals, Town Marshals and Sheriffs. They all deal with crime in the West. But I think that it'd be pointless us talking about the importance of crime without actually thinking about the causes of crime. So let's talk about the causes of crime. Okay, so when I ever think about law and order in the West, I always think about the culture of crime, so a culture of violence. You know, on top of that, what else have you got? It's really disorganized. You've got huge amounts of poverty. You have got gangs. You've got corruption. And although it doesn't necessarily come under the bracket of culture of violence, but you also have a huge territory to manage. So you've got the issue of geography. Huge amounts of land to deal with. and I believe there's in Kansas, some marshals have to cover 200,000 square kilometers of territory just to deal with law and order. And then finally, the final thing that we want to have a look at, and that is our second order concept. And in this particular question, it is really easy. It is the word importance. So, what you can do is you could make sure that in order to directly refer back to the question, you could use a sentence started this was important. Because when you come to explain, if you use that phrase, you are directly answering the question. But before we do have a go at that, let's just have a quick look at the number of marks here. So this is an 8-mark question. So what you will do here is you will do 2 paragraphs, and you will spend 10 minutes doing that. If we just have a quick look at some success criteria, right down at the very bottom of my page. So again, success criteria. Now again, this question, as I said to you, it's a cheeky explain why. So it's dead easy. You will have AO1, you will have AO2, and again a reminder, AO1 is your facts or your knowledge, and you will have AO2, that's your explanation. And just like explain why, you will have level 1, 2, 3 and 4 to determine how strong your answer is. It's not about the grades. So in order to get level 3 in terms of your AO1, all you need is you need to have 2 facts. For level 4, you need to have 2 precise facts per paragraph. Dead easy stuff. And remember, precise facts, names, dates, years, numbers, and so on. Explanation, again, it's just like an explain why. What you need to be doing for level 3, that would be your how and why. So 2 sentences of explanation, how and why. And your level 4 is how, why, so what. And just before you start writing, I just want to clarify what I mean by that. So how, that is how I would X lead to Y. Y would X lead to Y. And so what, dead easy, is, well, in this particular question, because we're the second order concept, so what generally links to the second order concept. But with this question, seeing as we're looking at importance, well, it's dead easy. It's why don't you just say why was X important? Really easy stuff. So I'll tell you what I will do then, is I will leave you now 10 minutes, press pause, set a time on your phone, and have a go at explaining the importance of the US federal government for dealing with law and order in the West. You've got 10 minutes to do that, and I will see you shortly. I look forward to going through our answers together. See you shortly. Hello there, welcome back. I hope you've had time there or I certainly hope you've spent 10 minutes explaining the importance of the US federal government for dealing with law and order in the West. I certainly have. And what I would like to do is I would like to take you through my answer, and what we will do is we will self-assess our own work and see how well we've done. As you probably worked out, is I've already had a go at this self-assessing this particular one. But I'll just go through it again with you one more time. And I'm really conscious of my ugly handwriting, so I'm going to read it out to you as well. And just as a reminder, our question is explain the importance of the US federal government for dealing with law and order in the West. So, to begin with, one reason why the US federal government was important for dealing with law and order in the West was the creation of the role of US Marshals and Town Marshals. So you can see here, I've already annotated, that is my AO2, I've presented a reason. I know that until the territory had a population of 50,000 people, it was still under the responsibility of the federal government, leading to the role of marshals. They dealt with shootouts, brawls, and could form posses to hunt down lawbreakers. This meant that the marshals would often respond to violent lawbreaking with violence, making it difficult to deal with crime because of the culture of violence. As a result, lawlessness and violence reduced the impact of the marshals who were attempting to deal with the disorderly life on the plains. This was important because it ultimately shows the failure of the federal government to deal with law and order. So you'll see here, I've already kind of highlighted my points here. I've made a reference to US Marshals or Town Marshals where I presented my reason. I've used phrases such as I know that to describe my first fact. I've described my second fact by describing what the marshals did, and then I've gone on to, as you can see here, is I have used this meant that to begin to explain how. As a result, to say why the marshals were a failure or why it didn't work, and then I've gone on to say why the role of the US Marshals were important for attempting to deal with law and order. And basically my entire argument of this first paragraph is that they actually weren't very successful at all. Let's have a look at my second one. Another reason why the US government were important for dealing with law and order was because of its failure to do so. So again, you could see here, as I've actually linked the two paragraphs together. For example, so presenting my own knowledge, the size of the territories were huge, in some areas as huge as 200,000 square kilometres. I also know that lawmen received very little training and funding, which ultimately led to corruption and personal grudges. This led to the culture of violence and disorder being reinforced, as there were no attempts to deal with the fairness or actually deal with crime properly if the lawmen weren't present. As a result, the lack of action led to huge amounts of corruption and communities creating their own law enforcement themselves. This would be important as the failure of the federal government did not stop crime, it simply created an environment for it to happen more. So again, if I just revisit that second paragraph, here presented in my first sentence where I've made my points, I have presented my reason, there's my AO2. I've brought in loads of AO1 here with some AO1 plus, and again I've brought in two facts here within this paragraph, and now I'm going on to my how. This led to the culture of violence and disorder, so I've explained how in essence its ineffectiveness and the size of the territories created failure. And then I've gone on to say why. Well, why was it so bad? Because, well, what happened is you see the creation of posses and vigilantes, don't you? And then finally, this would be important because it simply created an environment for crime to actually happen rather than actually dealing with crime. And as you can see, I've written here, with my so what, I've applied it to the second order concept. So I've already self-assessed my work here, where I've just had a wee go just before filming. And here we go. If I just go back to my my success criteria down here, well, what you'll see is well, have I got two facts per paragraph? Yes, I have. Have I got two precise facts per paragraph? I definitely have in my second one. I'm not so sure in my first paragraph. Have I got how and why in both paragraphs? Yes, I have. Have I got how and why, so what? Absolutely. So in which case then, for AO1, I would say that I'm level 3 plus or level 4 minus. The reason why I'm either one of those is because there's no precise facts. in the first paragraph. Or at least it could be more anyway. But plenty of how, why, so what. So I have given myself 7 out of 8 here. It's a tricky question, but it's very, very possible to get 8 out of 8 and 7 out of 8 there. So take the time now to have a little look at the success criteria again and self-assess your own work. Have you got 2 precise facts? Have you explained how your reason leads to lawlessness, or how it leads to the US federal government struggling to deal with law and order? Why your reason leads to the US federal government struggling to deal with law and order, and why your reason was important. Nice and easy. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you next time.